The struggling power utility Eskom poses a clear and present danger to the country's national security. This is a warning by senior research fellow, I should say, for African Fellow and International Relations at the University of Johannesburg, Dr. Oscar van Heerden. In his opinion piece, van Heerden is calling for the declaration of a state of emergency to avoid what he says is the impending catastrophe for the country. A number of companies such as Volkswagen, including steel producer Arcelormittal, have threatened to shed thousands of jobs due to the ongoing blackouts, among other issues. Let's speak now to the author of this very thought-provoking piece on the news site, News24. Dr. van Heerden, thank you very much for your time. And let's begin with what I think should ordinarily be an obvious question to many South Africans, and that is that President Ramaphosa, when he appointed Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa as Minister of Electricity, this was some time ago now, the expectation would have been, yes, we will continue to experience power cuts, but not severe load-shedding stages such as stage 6 recently. And so why are we still experiencing such?
Thanks, Collie. I mean, this is exactly the question that I'm asking. You know, unfortunately, the opinion piece asks more questions than can provide answers, because it seems to me we're just getting so many different answers from different people. The truth of the matter is, I think that Minister Ramokgopa, of course, comes in. He takes a correct approach, which is let's go to individual power plants, see what is the problem, correct that and move on. And in that incremental way, you are dealing with maintenance, you are dealing with systems issues and so forth. But the question still remains. We've brought Kusile reactor on stream. The repairs at the reactor 1 in Koeberg was completed and it's back into the grid. And indeed, we've also had new mothballed plants that were mothballed that are now being brought back in. We're spending money on diesel, and yet the load shedding continues. It is just baffling.
I've gone through that piece, Dr. van Heerden, with a fine-tooth comb, so I'm going to go into some of the points step by step. And you say in one of the points there that every time it looks like some people are getting to grips with the overall problem at Eskom, they get fired or they are forced to resign. Are you able to attach a name or two here?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we brought in the Reuters, Andre de Reuters, under much fanfare. Someone from the private sector who knew what needed to be done. There was need to clamp down on internal processes. There was need to clamp down on corruption within the utility. But there was also need to shed some jobs and make it a more lean and more efficient machine. And Andre de Reuters was well on his way to perform that. And then the next thing we are told that there are problems with him. And this is besides the death threats and so on and so forth that he had to endure. And I'm saying that here is someone that was beginning to make incremental changes, beginning to show us what kind of rot was in Eskom, and the next minute he has to go. And we can say the same with people like Koko. Whether we want to talk about the merits or demerits of corruption cases, I'm not there. But the point is that when Koko was at the utility, we saw significant progress being done and moving in the right direction. And now these people are not there anymore.
Dr. van Heerden, critics are going to say no, but you are letting Oscar go off scot-free here. You mentioned Andre de Reuters. I think the ANC is on record as having declared him an utter failure when it comes to the Eskom situation. I don't know, but you will probably have a better explanation. Is it perhaps because of the so-called intelligence gathering that he had instituted? Machela Koko, there's another human being who has been hauled to the courts. Yes, the matter against him withdrawn for now, and that's a major emphasis on for now, because that has to do with the state doing its work properly in order to bring him before courts. But there he was, blamed by the current administration as being among those who ran these plants to death, if you will, in order to impress or appease the administration of Jacob Zuma at the time. So the two individuals you are mentioning, I'm picking on them based on what has been said about them. So again, are you adamant that these people were closer to getting to grips with what's going on at Eskom?
Well, Collie, what we can say is that those matters are still out for public opinion. The jury is out in terms of their guilt or innocence. But all I'm saying is that part of the problem, and I mentioned it in the opinion piece, is also the fact that we can't locate Eskom under the correct political leadership. As we speak, there are still tensions between the three ministers as to who actually is in control, who is in charge of the utility. And I think that is something that needs to be resolved. So when they say that administrators are the problem and there is no onus on them to also say we need to also get our house in order, I think something is amiss.
Let's then get to grips with what you have titled your piece. And you say, Eskom poses a clear and present danger to our national security. Explain this to us in practical terms, Dr. van Heerden. How would this look?
Practically, anyone will agree with you that the utility is so big and the economy is so reliant on Eskom and the provision of energy, electricity. Not only big industry, the mining houses, the service sector, everyone is dependent on not only an economy that is effective and efficient, but electricity that is uninterrupted so that business can actually take place. You need to transport your goods and services. You need to be able to do electronic payments and so forth. Without electricity, the economy can collapse. And with these load-shedding stages, that is inexplicable in some instances. We know the Minister of Electricity has introduced, for example, the availability factor, which is what is available to be put into the grid, and then you juxtapose that, of course, with what is the demand. And we have seen over time and time again that even when the availability factor is very high, in other words, there is enough electricity to put into the grid, the demand is low, we're still experiencing load shedding.
Yeah.
And so in the opinion piece, I then say that if we don't arrest this problem in a very clear and demonstrate specific leadership to deal with this issue, it has now been 15 years. The economy simply is not going to be able to survive it. And we are going to see more and more companies withdrawing from the economy, less investment coming in because people are risk averse.
Yeah. I want to tease this point, Dr. van Heerden, because it is linked to the very warning that we may possibly contend with a national security problem. You then say, you propose rather, that President Ramaphosa declares a state of emergency to rid the country of this impending catastrophe. These are your words. Again, I'd like for you to spell that out for us, what that impending catastrophe would be, and how would a state of emergency look like if and when implemented?
What has been happening over the number of years is, there are various procedures, procurement rules in terms of Kusile and Medupe. You have to follow long procedures to comply with how you can procure, who you can employ, which companies you can bring in to solve immediate short-term problems. These are all necessary regulatory frameworks. But when you are faced with an existential crisis, a threat, and this is why I'm elevating it and saying it is a national threat to the economy, to the republic. When you elevate it to that level, then it means you need extraordinary measures to be able to circumvent what usually would be your everyday rules and regulations. For example, like your PFMA and so on and so forth. And the only way to do that is when there's a disaster or when the president declares a state of emergency. And I'm saying that after 15 years, is it not time for the president to do that and call for that state of emergency in order to facilitate extraordinary measures to try and deal with this crisis?
Let's conclude on a point, and I'm going to deliberately read from it because I thought that was quite brave of you to put it plainly like that. And I wonder what the government of the day might respond and say. But here we go. I'm going to quote you directly. 15 years, and we have failed to resolve this problem. That's why no one can deny the accusation of incompetence of the highest order. I won't stoop so low as to suggest that this is because we have a black government, but you must admit it doesn't look good for us. Why did you choose to go there?
Well, I go there because this is a popular refrain from many in the catering classes. You know, it's the incompetence of blacks. It is the incompetence of the ANC, and so on and so forth. And there are some merit, perhaps, in those arguments. But the truth of the matter, I deliberate on that fully. And I say, we've had different CEOs, different leaderships that have been attempting to solve this problem over the last 15 years. We had Damons, we had De Ruyter, we had Brian Molefe. The list is endless. We've had all the groups within the South African society, Indians, whites, coloreds, black African, and they have not been able to resolve this crisis. And so I'm saying I don't think it's about blackness. I don't think it's about the incompetence of a black government. It's just such a complex problem, and Eskom must tell us what is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Dr. Oscar van Heerden, let me thank you very much for your time.